The Jacquard fleet glided silently through the black void of space, their massive warships glinting like jagged rocks against the backdrop of distant stars. They were confident that their arrival in the Icarus 7 system would be just another easy conquest. The humans were little more than ants to them, weak in comparison to the mighty Jacquard Empire, and they would be eradicated swiftly and without mercy. The alien commanders had long since grown accustomed to crushing weaker civilizations beneath their feet. No one had ever been able to stand against them, and the Jacquard fleet was as powerful as it had ever been. Their ships were equipped with devastating weapons that could obliterate entire planets in a matter of hours. Their armada was vast, and their tactics flawless. They believed they had calculated every possible outcome and predicted every move the humans might make. But the humans had something the Jacquard didn't understand, something they couldn't predict, a quiet but unyielding resolve that had been hidden in the shadows of their worlds for years, something more than just technology or strength. The humans had a spirit that could not be easily broken, and they had been preparing for this moment. The fleet of alien ships drifted closer to the planet Icarus 7, its glowing surface a reminder of how far humanity had come from their humble beginnings. Their greatest achievements had taken place within their own solar system, and now the Jacquard intended to crush the very symbol of their rise to power. But as the alien fleet drew closer, something unexpected happened. The humans did not scatter in fear. They did not cower in terror. No, their response was measured, silent. On the outskirts of the system, barely visible even to the most advanced sensors, the Vigilant Dawn sat in perfect stillness. It was a ship unlike anything the Jacquard had ever seen, a warship of human design, but it didn't appear on any of their reconnaissance scans. It had been built in secrecy by the finest minds of humanity's military engineers. Its technology far outstripped anything the Jacquard had encountered so far, and it was ready to make its debut. The crew of the Vigilant Dawn had been waiting for this moment. Their hands hovered over their controls, ready to unleash everything they had learned and perfected in the quiet months leading up to this battle. There was no question of fear or hesitation, only the calm understanding that the time had come to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The Jacquard fleet was now so close that they could make out the faintest details of the human colony beneath them, and in the blink of an eye the battle began. Without warning, the Vigilant Dawn moved out of its hiding spot like a phantom costing through the stars, its hull shimmering with the power of its experimental engines. The alien fleet was caught off guard, but they quickly recovered. Their massive ships began to organize into formation, ready to rain down destruction on the humans who had dared to stand in their path. The first salvo from a Jacquard destroyer sailed past the Vigilant Dawn, its energy blast striking a nearby asteroid with a deafening crash. But the human warship didn't flinch. It moved with an elegance and speed that the Jacquard had not expected. The human ship danced through the hail of fire as if it were alive, dodging every strike with ease. The aliens watched in stunned silence as their weapons failed to land a single blow. They were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers. But this was different. This was not a battle between invaders and the weak. This was a fight that had only just begun, and already it was clear that the Jacquard were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The Jacquard fleet continued to fire relentlessly at the Vigilant Dawn, but their attacks were ineffective. The human warship danced between blasts with a fluidity and precision that seemed impossible. The Jacquard commanders watched in disbelief as their weapons failed to make a mark on the sleek human vessel, their confidence faltering for the first time since the battle began. They ordered a new strategy. "Launch the interceptors," barked Commander Zalrith, one of the highest-ranking officers aboard the lead flagship, his voice laced with both frustration and fury. "Crush that ship before it becomes a problem." The Jacquard fleet responded immediately. Dozens of small, fast-moving ships darted from the belly of the massive warships, their engines flaring as they sped toward the Vigilant Dawn. With surgical precision, the interceptors were designed to overwhelm targets like the Vigilant Dawn. By surrounding them from all sides, their firepower combined was more than enough to bring down any enemy. But once again, the humans proved themselves unpredictable. As the Vigilant Dawn moved with a strange agility, it wasn't simply a matter of speed. The ship twisted and turned in ways that defied conventional understanding of ship design. It was as if the ship anticipated every move of the alien interceptors and adapted to their tactics almost in real time. The Jakarn pilots attempted to corral the Vigilant Dawn in a tight circle, hoping to box it in, but the human warship slipped through the cracks of their formation with ease, as if the ship were an extension of its captain's mind. It was then that the aliens realized this wasn't just a ship piloted by ordinary humans, it was a weapon of profound mastery. The Jakarn fleet began to feel the balance of power was tipping toward the humans, and with every moment that passed it became more apparent that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The Vigilant Dawn's weaponry erupted into life. The first volley from its forward-facing cannons cut through the oncoming interceptors. With a laser-like accuracy, each shot fired precisely where it needed to go, not a single blast wasted as the alien fighters disintegrated in bursts of fire and metal. The Jakarn tried to respond, but the Vigilant Dawn moved too quickly. It was as if the human ship was toying with them, letting them think they had a chance before striking again with devastating force. As the interceptors were wiped from the sky, another wave of alien fighters emerged, and for the briefest moment, it seemed as though the tide might turn, but the Jakarn hadn't considered the hidden advantage of human ingenuity. Their weapons were advanced, their shields impenetrable, their tactics unpredictable, but it was the human spirit that could not be ignored. Aboard the Vigilant Dawn, Captain Alina Kort stood at the helm, her hand steady and her gaze unwavering despite the chaos unfolding on the viewscreen. She knew that every decision she made would matter. The crew was silent, but focused. They moved as one machine, each member fully aware of their role in this fight. They weren't just defending their home, they were proving to the galaxy that humanity would no longer cower in the shadows of those who thought themselves superior. With a decisive motion, Captain Kor issued the order to engage the primary weapon. The hum of energy built up in the core of the Vigilant Dawn. As the ship charged its immense cannon, the alien fighters closed in from all sides, but the human warship fired before they could get within striking distance. The beam of energy cut through space, like a living thing tearing through the heart of the Jakarn fleet in a blinding flash. The first alien warship was obliterated instantly, and the shockwave of the explosion sent the remaining interceptors scattering in every direction. The Jakarn fleet had never encountered anything like this. They had never faced an enemy that could strike with such force and precision, with such terrifying speed. The confidence they had once felt turned to confusion and fear. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The Jakarn commanders scrambled to regain control as their fleet reeled from the devastating loss of their interceptors and the sudden annihilation of one of their warships. The shockwave of the Vigilant Dawn's first strike reverberated through the alien ranks, causing even their most experienced captains to hesitate for a fleeting moment, something that had never happened before on the battlefield. Commander Zalrith gritted his teeth, his claws digging into the armrests of his command chair. His pride bruised, he could feel the pressure mounting as his fleet struggled to recover from the unexpected chaos. Reorganize the formation, he ordered, his voice cold with determination. We must adapt and crush them now. The alien fleet began to realign itself, now more cautious, but no less confident in its superior numbers. They launched a second wave of ships, this time including several larger dreadnoughts designed for heavy bombardment. These ships would unleash powerful salvos of energy weaponry that could wipe out entire fleets at once. But the Jakarn knew that brute force alone would not be enough against the Vigilant Dawn. They needed to outsmart the humans, to box them in and overwhelm them before the human warship could escape. The Vigilant Dawn watched as the Jakarn regrouped. The crew aboard the human warship knew the aliens were planning something bigger, but they weren't concerned. Captain Alina Kor had seen this kind of strategy before. She understood the mind of a conqueror, and she knew how to anticipate their moves. Her crew had already analyzed the situation and prepared countermeasures. The battle was far from over. All systems online, Lieutenant Bannon called from the communication station. We're good to go, Captain. Kor nodded without breaking her focus on the viewscreen. The massive alien ships closing in on them. The Vigilant Dawn was outnumbered but not outclassed. She gripped the helm tighter. Activate the pulse disruptors and engage evasive maneuvers, she ordered, her voice calm, but with an edge of steel. The Jacquard dreadnoughts fired first their weapons, lighting up the dark expanse of space in blinding flashes, but the Vigilant Dawn was already in motion. It juked and weaved through the barrage with incredible agility, dodging the incoming fire by mere inches. The Jacquard watched in disbelief. The human warship was moving too fast for them to lock on. "Keep firing," Zalrith roared, but it was already too late. The Vigilant Dawn fired back with precision. It was no longer just a warship, but a force of nature. The pulse disruptors unleashed their deadly charge, causing massive interference within the Jacquard ship's targeting systems. The pulses scrambled the alien sensors, distorting their range and precision. The Vigilant Dawn's weapons fired in rapid succession, hitting Jacquard ships where they were most vulnerable, while their guns remained out of focus. Within moments, the first of the alien dreadnoughts began to break apart, its shields flickering out as the Vigilant Dawn's energy cannons tore through its hull, sending debris spinning into the void, its explosion rippling across the battlefield. The Jacquard fleet was in disarray as their larger ships began to fall one by one. They tried to reposition, but the Vigilant Dawn moved with impossible precision, hitting weak points in their armor and disabling their engines. The tide of battle shifted once again, and the Jacquard began to realize they were not dealing with a typical enemy. Zalrith clenched his fists in frustration. His once confident fleet was now crumbling under the pressure of human ingenuity. "We need reinforcements now," he growled. But reinforcements would not come in time. The humans were too fast, too relentless, and with every ship the Jacquard lost, they were forced to regroup further and further back, unable to maintain any kind of coordinated assault. Captain Kor surveyed the battlefield, her face set in grim determination. As the last of the alien interceptors scattered in panic, the Vigilant Dawn stood tall in the center of the chaos, its crew working together with flawless coordination, every move calculated, every strike lethal. "Keep pushing forward," Kor muttered under her breath as the Vigilant Dawn advanced toward the remaining alien ships. "We finish this now." The humans had no intention of stopping, not while their enemies still thought they could win, not while the galaxy still underestimated what humanity was capable of. And with each passing second, the Jacquard's belief that they were unstoppable began to slip further and further away. The Jacquard fleet was beginning to fracture under the relentless assault of the Vigilant Dawn *, their largest dreadnoughts now barely holding together, their formations falling apart as they struggled to counter the human warship's precision strikes. The remaining Jacquard ships scrambled to regroup, but they could no longer maintain the coordinated strategy they had relied on for so long. Commander Zalrith stood at the helm of his flagship, his claws gripping the command console as he watched in disbelief, his once mighty fleet dwindling before his eyes. The human warship was a nightmare, one they could not wake from. Its every move seemed to predict theirs, and its weapons tore through their ships like paper. "We cannot lose this fight," Zalrith muttered to himself, his voice barely audible through the tension in the command deck. "Prepare the final weapon." The crew of the flagship exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared question their commander. The Jacquard had a weapon that they had kept in reserve for situations like this, a weapon that could turn the tide of battle and obliterate any enemy standing in their way. The Dreadfall-class superweapon was an immense device capable of sending out an energy pulse powerful enough to obliterate everything within a large radius. Its destructive power was unmatched, but it had never been used before in combat. It was a last resort weapon, one the Jacquard had designed to ensure their dominance over any foe who dared challenge them, but now it was their only hope of survival. "Activate the Dreadfall weapon," Zalrith commanded, his voice filled with a cold finality. The massive weapon at the heart of the flagship hummed to life, its energy core glowing a menacing crimson as it began to charge. The crew watched in horror as the device powered up, its devastating force threatening to tear apart everything in its path. On the Vigilant Dawn Captain Kor saw the shift in the Jacquard's tactics. She knew they were desperate. Their movements became erratic as they activated something new and dangerous. Her instincts screamed that this would be different. The alien commanders had no choice but to use their trump card. "Brace for impact," Kor ordered her crew, her voice steady though her mind raced. "Prepare for whatever they're about to throw at us." The alien flagship fired first. Its weapon released a pulse of energy that spread across the battlefield like a shockwave. The Vigilant Dawn shields flared as they absorbed the initial impact, but the pulse was too strong for any defense to fully absorb. Parts of the ship's systems flickered as the shockwave disrupted their circuits. Status report, Core demanded as the lights dimmed and alarms blared throughout the ship. Shields holding, but we've lost some auxiliary systems. Bannon replied, his voice tense. We can't take another hit like that. Core nodded grimly, her mind already calculating the next move. They couldn't allow themselves to be caught in the next pulse. It was too powerful. It could tear the Vigilant Dawn apart in seconds. Get us closer to their flagship, she ordered. Prepare the secondary weapons and keep firing. The Vigilant Dawn surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it sped toward the heart of the enemy fleet, while the Jacquard flagship fired another pulse. Core could see it coming, but she knew the human ship's agility would allow them to avoid it in time. Now, she shouted as the Vigilant Dawn twisted and turned with fluid grace, dodging the blast by a fraction of a second. The Jacquard had underestimated the human warship's speed and maneuverability once again, and the gap between them widened. As the Vigilant Dawn closed the distance, Core's crew opened fire with everything they had left, their weapons, locking onto the flagship's weak points and hammering away at its shields. The pulse disruptors flared back to life, sending shockwaves through the Jacquard ship systems once again as their defenses faltered. But even with their flagship faltering, the Jacquard weren't finished yet. Desperation had brought them to this point, and they were determined to make humanity pay for their defiance. Launch all remaining fighters, Zalrith barked. Do not let them get close to the dreadful weapon. Swarming from the flagship like a cloud of hornets, hundreds of Jacquard fighters surged toward the Vigilant Dawn in a last-ditch effort to stop the human warship before it could reach the heart of their fleet. The Vigilant Dawn responded in kind, dodging the incoming barrage of fighter ships with deadly precision, each movement calculated and deliberate as its cannons fired into the heart of the alien swarm. One by one, the Jacquard fighters were torn apart, and the remaining fighters began to falter as the weight of the human warship's firepower wore them down. Captain Core's eyes never left the screen as the Vigilant Dawn approached the alien flagship, knowing that this final push would determine the fate of the battle. The Jacquard had gambled everything on this moment, but they hadn't accounted for the ferocity and cunning of the human spirit. The tide of the battle had shifted, but the Jacquard were not yet ready to surrender. The remaining fighters swarmed like angry wasps, desperate to protect the last remnants of their fleet, and more crucially, their precious dreadful weapon. As the Vigilant Dawn advanced, closing the gap with the Jacquard flagship, the atmosphere aboard the human warship grew tense but focused. Captain Alina Core's crew, seasoned by the chaos of battle, worked in perfect harmony, each member of the crew understanding their role in this high-stakes moment. Firing thrusters to full power, Captain, Lieutenant Bannon said, his voice steady despite the escalating tension. Core nodded sharply, her gaze locked on the alien flagship. She could see the desperation in their movements now. The Jacquard had underestimated humanity's resolve, but now they were learning the hard way that the human will to survive and protect was not easily broken. The Vigilant Dawn was only a fraction of the fleet's total strength, but it had become the embodiment of humanity's ingenuity and defiance. Keep us tight to their flank. Avoid the main guns, Core ordered. Her eyes flicked the tactical readout as the Jacquard flagship attempted to fire another pulse from its dreadful weapon. The pulse raced toward the Vigilant Dawn, but it was too late. The human ship weaved through space, agile and precise, evading the blast at the last possible moment. The alien weapon missed, striking only empty space, and the Vigilant Dawn was already on the move again, its energy cannons lighting up the battlefield with deadly precision. The Jacquard flagship's shields flickered as the first barrage slammed into them, each shot calculated to exploit the weak points Core had identified earlier. Direct hit on their forward shields, Bannon called out. We've got them. But despite the damage, the Jacquard flagship was still dangerous. The dreadful weapon, while not fully operational due to the disruption, was still functional enough to wreak havoc if it got a clear shot. Kor knew that the next few moments would be critical. She had to take down the flagship before the Jacquard could fire again. Deploy the secondary drones, engage the engines. Kor commanded. A ripple of activity spread across the bridge as the crew moved into action. Small, autonomous drones launched from the Vigilant Dawn, targeting the weaker engine ports of the Jacquard flagship. These drones were designed to disable the enemy's movement systems, and they were the perfect tool for this desperate moment. As the drones streaked through the void toward their target, Kor watched the Jacquard flagship helplessly try to turn its massive hull in an effort to avoid the incoming swarm. But the Vigilant Dawn was faster, and the drones succeeded in their task, firing disabling shots into the flagship's propulsion system. The flagship's movement slowed as its engines sputtered and failed, leaving it vulnerable. "We've got them immobilized," Bannon reported, eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. "Now's our chance, Captain." Kor's heart pounded in her chest as she gave the command. "All guns, fire on the main weapon systems." Now, the Vigilant Dawn unleashed its full power once more. Energy blasts tore into the Jacquard flagship, hitting its weakened weapon systems, one after another. The main cannons sputtered and exploded under the strain, their deadly energy channels overloaded. The dreadful weapon, the Jacquard's last hope for victory, powered down in a final anticlimactic flash of light. For a moment, there was a breathless silence. The Jacquard flagship was now a hulking, smoking wreck, its once gleaming surface now pockmarked with the scars of battle. The alien fleet, deprived of their strongest weapon, began to scatter, their coordination completely destroyed. The Vigilant Dawn had struck a decisive blow. But the Jacquard were not yet finished. Their remaining ships, though shaken, regrouped in an attempt to make one last stand. Captain Kor knew that even with the flagship crippled, there would be no easy victory. The Jacquard were a proud race, and their defeat would not come without one final desperate push. "Don't let up," Kor ordered. "We finish this now. All forward guns, target their remaining cruisers. This ends today." The Vigilant Dawn surged forward again, a relentless force that no longer feared the overwhelming numbers of the Jacquard fleet. The aliens had shown their true weakness, their underestimation of humanity. And now the humans would prove that their resolve was unmatched. The battle for Icarus 7 had become a turning point, and the Vigilant Dawn was ready to bring it to a close. The Jacquard fleet, now scattered and in disarray, was desperately trying to regroup. Their flagship had been crippled, and with it, their most powerful weapon. The remaining ships, though still formidable in their own right, were no longer a cohesive force. The Vigilant Dawn's relentless pursuit had broken their spirit, and the realization that their invincibility was nothing more than a myth was sinking in. On board the Vigilant Dawn, Captain Kor's expression was a mask of cold determination. The Jacquard fleet had crumbled under their initial assault, but now they were clinging to whatever shred of hope remained. The next few minutes would determine whether humanity's stand would be remembered as a triumph or a brief flare of defiance. "Target the remaining cruisers," Kor commanded again, her voice unwavering. The crew had already analyzed the remaining Jacquard ships, and their weaknesses were now exposed. "Focus fire on their engines. I want them disabled, not destroyed." The Vigilant Dawn's guns roared to life once more, sending precise blasts into the heart of the enemy fleet. The Jacquard ships attempted evasive maneuvers, but their reactions were sluggish, their ships rattled by the loss of their flagship and the disarray within their ranks. The Vigilant Dawn danced between their shots, never missing a beat, while its weapons continued their relentless barrage. The first of the Jacquard cruisers exploded in a flash of fire as the Vigilant Dawn's energy blasts tore through its rear engine compartments, crippling the ship and sending it spiraling into the void. It was a spectacular sight. one that would go down in history as a symbol of humanity's resilience. But the crew aboard the Vigilant Dawn had no time for celebration. The Jacquard still had firepower, and they were not yet finished. One down, two more to go, Bannon said, his voice a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline. They're trying to break formation, Captain. Kor's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The remaining Jacquard cruisers were attempting to scatter, hoping to gain some semblance of freedom from the Vigilant Dawn's relentless pursuit. But they couldn't escape. The Vigilant Dawn was faster, more agile, and it had proven that its firepower could dismantle the Jacquard's advanced technology with ruthless efficiency. Don't let them run, Kor ordered. Lock onto the next target. No mercy. The second Jacquard cruiser was already turning to make a break for it when the Vigilant Dawn struck. A blistering volley of energy beams erupted from the human warship's weapons array, and the cruiser's engines flared with a blinding light as the Vigilant Dawn's blasts struck their mark. The Jacquard ship shuddered, and a series of explosions rocked its hull, crippling it within moments. It, too, was sent tumbling into the abyss of space, a massive debris field marking its final resting place. Two down, Bannon said, the intensity in his voice rising. One more to go. The last cruiser, now isolated and without the support of its comrades, attempted one final desperate charge at the Vigilant Dawn. It fired its remaining weapons with reckless abandon, hoping to score a fatal blow before it, too, was torn apart. But the Vigilant Dawn was ready. Its energy shields flared as the blasts collided with the human warship's outer hull, but the ship absorbed the impact with little more than a few sparks. The human ship's armor, stronger and more resilient than anything the Jacquard had anticipated, held firm. Target their engines and fire, Kor commanded, her voice calm but firm. The Vigilant Dawn fired again, this time with pinpoint accuracy. The remaining Jacquard cruiser's engines erupted into flames, and it was immediately rendered immobile. The Jacquard crew aboard the ship could do nothing as their vessel was pulled into the gravitational field of a nearby asteroid, its once pristine surface now a charred, twisted wreck. All Jacquard ships have been neutralized, Captain, Bannon reported, his voice full of awe. We've done it. Kor exhaled slowly, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. The Vigilant Dawn had shattered the Jacquard fleet, crippling their hopes of invasion and leaving behind only the wreckage of their arrogance. The crew of the Vigilant Dawn had proven themselves to be a force the Jacquard would never forget. But as Kor glanced at the scattered debris of the destroyed Jacquard fleet, her thoughts turned to the future. The battle for Icarus 7 was over, but the galaxy had now witnessed humanity's strength, and as they sailed victorious through the wreckage, she knew this was only the beginning. The Jacquard would be back, but the humans would be ready. Status of the fleet, Lieutenant, Kor asked, her eyes hardening with the knowledge that this was only a temporary victory. All systems are operational, Captain, Bannon replied. Minor damage to our starboard shields, but nothing we can't handle. Kor nodded, already turning her thoughts to the aftermath. Prepare for the next phase. We'll need to secure the system and send word to the rest of the fleet. Humanity has shown what we're capable of today, but this fight isn't over. The Vigilant Dawn sailed through the void of space, its victory echoing across the stars. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. The Jacquard might have underestimated them, but they would not make that mistake again. As the Vigilant Dawn drifted among the wreckage of the Jacquard fleet, the crew took a moment to process the significance of what had just transpired. The bridge was silent, save for the occasional hum of systems running at full capacity and the soft beeps of diagnostic readouts. Captain Kor stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the expanse of space outside, where the remnants of their once feared adversaries floated like discarded toys. The Jacquard had come with an overwhelming force, but in the end, it was humanity's ingenuity and tenacity that had carried the day. Captain, Bannon said, breaking the silence. His voice was quieter now, no longer the tense urgency it had held during the battle, but still filled with respect and awe. I think it's safe to say we've made our mark on the galaxy today. Cor glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "We've made a statement," she replied, her voice steady, but laced with the weight of the moment. "But don't forget, Bannon, a statement isn't the same as securing peace. The Jacquard may be broken for now, but they won't forget what we've done. And they won't be the only ones watching." Her words hung in the air like a warning, and for a brief moment, the crew felt a collective tension ripple through the bridge. The battle for Icarus 7 was won, but the war, if it could even be called that, had just begun. The Vigilant Dawn had proven itself to be more than just a ship. It had become a symbol of human resilience, but symbols alone didn't win wars. Humanity had made powerful enemies in the galaxy, and while the Jacquard had been repelled, others would soon take their place. "Lieutenant," Cor continued, turning to Bannon, "send a message to command. I want a full report on the current state of the system and an analysis of any remaining threats. We can't afford to relax just yet." "Understood, Captain," Bannon said, already tapping into the communications console. As he began drafting the message, Cor walked to the observation window and stared out at the remnants of the Jacquard fleet, the debris now floating in a hauntingly beautiful, chaotic dance. She could feel the eyes of the universe on them, watching as humanity's star began to shine in the galaxy. She knew that the victory was a powerful one, but it was only a piece of a much larger puzzle. They had shown the Jacquard that they could fight back, but what about the others? What about the alien races who saw humanity as nothing more than an emerging species, weak and vulnerable? "Captain," Bannon's voice broke her train of thought. "Message sent. Command's requesting a status update from us, as well as intelligence on potential reinforcements. They're expecting us to keep eyes on this system until they can send support." "Good," Cor replied, turning back toward him. "We stay here for now. No one else is getting in or out of Icarus 7 without our say-so. Set up defensive measures around the system, and let's make sure there are no surprises." "Aye, Captain," Bannon said, his fingers already moving to initiate the necessary protocols. The bridge crew continued their work, and Cor's mind turned to the next phase of their mission. The Jacquard had been driven back, but their defeat wasn't a signal that their enemies would simply fade into the void. Far from it. The universe was full of predatory species, and humanity had just caught the attention of the most dangerous one. "We'll need to strengthen our alliances," Cor murmured under her breath, more to herself than to anyone else. Bannon, who had overheard, looked up from his console. "You think they'll be willing to join us?" Cor's eyes narrowed. They won't have a choice. The universe had just learned what humanity was capable of. It was a harsh lesson for the Jacquard, and soon enough, other races would feel the same sting. Captain Cor knew that the Vigilant Dawn's victory was just the beginning of humanity's rise on the galactic stage. But that rise would be met with resistance. The question wasn't whether humanity could survive. It was whether they could thrive in a galaxy that would no longer view them as insignificant. And for the first time in history, the galaxy was about to realize that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. "Prepare for any incoming transmissions," Cor said, her voice resolute. "And let's be ready for the next move. This battle might be over, but the war for our place in the stars is just beginning." The Vigilant Dawn lingered in the aftermath, its engines humming softly as the crew continued their work in the silence that followed the chaos of battle. Captain Cor stood at the observation window, her arms crossed over her chest, as she watched the debris field left behind by the Jacquard fleet. The stars shone brightly in the distance, peaceful in their eternal dance, yet she knew that peace would be fleeting. The battle for Icarus 7 had only been a single chapter in a much larger story, one that humanity had just begun to write. The comms console chirped, pulling her from her thoughts. Lieutenant Bannon's voice rang out. "Captain, we've received a transmission from command. They're requesting a full debrief on the engagement, along with recommendations for the next course of action." Cor exhaled slowly, her fingers tracing the cool metal of the window frame. It had been a victory, yes, a hard-fought one. But there was no time for celebration. Not yet. She had already learned that the universe did not allow for long moments of respite. The Jacquard had been powerful, but they weren't the only ones out there. "Send the report," Kor said, her voice steady but laced with the weight of experience. "Let them know what happened here, but also remind them that this was a singular victory, not the end of the war." "Understood, Captain," Bannon replied. The crew moved with precision, their operations continuing seamlessly as they completed the tasks necessary to secure the area. While Kor trusted her crew to do their jobs, her mind remained fixated on the larger picture. The Jacquard had underestimated humanity, and they had paid the price for it. But other alien species were already watching. The first domino had fallen, but humanity was still standing at the edge of the board, surrounded by potential allies and enemies alike. A soft chime from her console broke the silence, and Kor's eyes flicked to the screen. It was a new transmission. An encrypted message, one that could only be from one source. "Command. Patch it through," she ordered, and a moment later, the screen flickered to life. The familiar face of Admiral O'Hara appeared, her sharp features softened by the faint glow of her command room. "Captain Kor," O'Hara began, her voice calm but with a hint of urgency, "I've reviewed your report, and I have to say, impressive work. You've not only stopped an invasion, but you've sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity will not be a footnote in the grand history of the stars." Kor inclined her head slightly. "Thank you, Admiral. But I'd be lying if I said this battle was anything more than a small victory. The Jacquard will regroup. They always do. And this wasn't just about them." O'Hara's eyes hardened, the weight of the conversation settling between them. "We know. The galaxy is a vast, dangerous place. The Jacquard are only one piece of the puzzle, but they were the first to underestimate us, and they won't be the last. Your victory today has changed things, Captain. Command believes humanity is ready to take the next step." Kor raised an eyebrow. "The next step." O'Hara paused, clearly choosing her words carefully. "We've received overtures from several systems. They're asking for alliances. Some are curious, others are more strategic. Your actions have sent a message, Captain, and now the galaxy is looking at us. They want to know if humanity is a force worth allying with or opposing." Kor felt a tightness in her chest. The weight of her actions, the consequences of this victory, were starting to sink in. Humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer uncertain. They had made their mark. But what would that mark become? Would they be allies or adversaries in the coming days? "Understood, Admiral," Kor replied, her voice low. "We'll be ready. But it's not just about forming alliances. We need to prepare for whatever's coming next." O'Hara nodded. "Agreed. You've proven humanity can hold its own in battle. But now you'll need to show the galaxy that we can hold our ground politically as well. And remember, Captain, there are those who will see your victory as a challenge. This is only the beginning." As the transmission ended, Kor leaned back in her chair, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The vigilant Dawn had achieved what few had thought possible, but in doing so, humanity had attracted attention, both positive and negative. She knew this moment in history would define the trajectory of the human race in the stars. Her crew had proven themselves today. But as she gazed out at the stars once more, she understood that the path ahead would be far from simple. The galaxy was watching, and humanity was no longer just a distant presence in the dark void. They were players now. "Prepare for any communications from potential allies or opposition," Kor ordered, standing from her seat. "This is far from over, and we'll be ready for whatever comes next." With that, she turned back toward the window, her gaze hardening as the stars burned in the distance. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.